Going into every NBA season, as fans, we always love making predictions on how we think this year is going to turn out, whether it be predictions for various teams, players, statistics, all of it. And in some instances, we also love making our bold predictions. Those are the predictions that by most accounts are a bit of a stretch, but also could very well end up coming to fruition. And I did this last season as well, as I just released this on my NBA channel earlier this week. But in today's video, we're going to be going over some bold predictions for the Bulls for this upcoming season. And I would love to hear some of your bold predictions as we're going through some of this as well. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, I'd actually initially planned to do this video a few days back, and then the Damian Lillard trade news broke, so I decided to hold off on it for a little bit. So some of this might actually already seem a bit dated because I already had the video ready and prepped to go, but I'm going to make a few adjustments to it given we just learned new information from that trade. Now, as I mentioned this on my bold predictions video on the NBA channel, which I'll leave a link to that video in case you guys want to check it out, but I do have to emphasize that these are bold predictions for a reason. Bold meaning that I'm aware these predictions are a stretch, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if they came true. You kind of view these more as hot takes, if you will. So bear that in mind, as I'm sure some people will be losing their minds and going crazy in the comments when they hear some of these. But with that said, let's get into some of these. And my first bold prediction for the season is that the Bulls are going to win 45 plus games. Now, you've probably heard me say this one before because I've mentioned this in prior videos. And while I don't like giving my overall conference standing predictions until we hit the preseason, given so many things can change between now and the start of the season. Case in point, we just saw Damian Lillard get traded. What's going to happen with James Harden? Maybe even Tyler Hero for that matter. Also Drew Holiday. Where are these guys ultimately going to end up? And that will greatly impact the overall Eastern Conference standings. But regardless, barring any crazy circumstances between now and the start of the season, and of course, assuming the Bulls can stay healthy, I have the Bulls winning 45 plus games. And to really make it bold, I'm going to say it's probably going to be closer to 47. Why? Well, you guys know this. I've said it about 20 times now on the channel. The Bulls lost 17 games last season by 5 points or less, 8 of those by 1 possession. And of course, as you guys know, the Bulls were dead last in the league last season in terms of three-point shooting volume, meaning attempts. In those 17 games specifically, the three-point disparity between them and their opponent was especially drastic. For the Bulls, they simply could not keep up and compete in games without enough three-point shooting. This season, you would hope some of that is going to change. I'm not saying they're suddenly going to become the Warriors and start putting up over 43s a game, but with the additions of Carter and Craig, you would hope that there will be more of a focus to have Zach play off the ball and take more threes on the catch and shoot as well. And you would also hope to see Patrick Williams and Coby take more threes per game too. And because of that, given the fact the Bulls won 40 games last year, you would think even just winning 5 to 7 more games of those 17 that they lost, especially when you consider how close some of those games were that they lost last season, 47 games, 45 to 47 is not out of the question. Obviously, there are going to be a lot of other factors outside of just three-point shooting, like closing out games, keeping up the pace, not focusing so much on heavy isolation ball. But regardless, I think the Bulls will be able to overcome some of this and win at least 45 games. My next bold prediction, DeMar DeRozan will score less than 22 points per game this season. For reference, DeMar last season averaged 24.5 points per game. And the season before that, when he made second team All-NBA with the Bulls, he put up nearly 28 points per game. So having him dip below 22, when we know he likes to get his shot attempts, we know he likes to control the ball, but I honestly believe DeMar is going to take a bit of a step back this year. That's not to say taking a step back as if he's going to decline or fall off, but rather he's going to defer more. He's going to enable Zach, Vucevic, and even Pat and Coby to get more shot attempts. Because look, DeMar knows he can put up 30 a night if he really wants to. He knows he can get to his spots and score. But if the last season and a half has taught us anything, it's that it hasn't been working for the betterment of the team. And say what you will about DeMar, but he's a professional. He is a team leader. I know it may not seem like it because a lot of Bulls fans would argue he's actually more of a selfish player because he does play a lot of ISO ball and controls the overall flow of the offense, but DeMar will actually do what's good for the team. We've seen him do that in San Antonio when he was asked to take on a lesser scoring role from Coach Pop, when he was putting up closer to 20 points per game, but he became more of a facilitator and averaging near 7 assists. And look, at this stage of DeMar's career, he just turned 34. He's got a few good years left in the NBA. He knows these are some of his last opportunities to win. Everyone knows DeMar DeRozan as the scorer, but will he be known as a winner when all is said and done in his career? And DeMar knows that in order for this team to win, the ball needs to be shared more. The offensive system has to change, and that really starts with him being more of a facilitator in addition to being a scorer, and letting guys like Zach and Vooch take on more of the brunt on offense. And with DeMar taking more of a back seat on offense, it kind of leads me into my next bold prediction, and that's that Patrick Williams, yes, Patrick Williams will average more than 14 points per game and even get a few Most Improved Player of the Year award votes. I know for some that might not seem like a bold prediction because in a way you're kind of expecting or hoping anyway that Pat is going to take some kind of leap because the Bulls' success this season is highly dependent on it, but keep in mind Patrick Williams, who is often referred to sometimes as Passive Pat, a player that only averaged 10.2 points per game last season, even though he started most of the year and played almost 30 minutes per game. And with 4 additional points, that might not seem like a lot. It is over the course of a regular season. And you also factor in that he has to share a lot of shot attempts with guys like Zach Lavine, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, and now even Javon Carter, who is going to have the green light to take threes. And so to go from 10 to 14 points per game in one season on a team that is, for all intents and purposes, still trying to win now is a sizable increase for someone like him. And then as far as Pat getting some Most Improved Player of the Year votes, doesn't mean I think he's going to win the award or even finish in, say, the top 5 in voting, but he'll get a couple votes here and there, especially if the Bulls do well. The next one is really bold, but I predict the Bulls will finish top 10 in defense and offense this season. Now, this of course we're basing off of defensive and offensive rating. Last season the Bulls actually finished 5th in defense, which is always kind of surprising to people because you look at the team and you see their 3 best players aren't high-level defenders and mainly known for their elite offense. And so it makes it even more surprising when you see that they finished 24th in the league in offensive rating last year. So while the Bulls finishing top 10 in defense isn't a stretch at all when they finished 5th last year, and you consider the fact they added 2 more defensive-minded players, but having them finish top 10 on offense is going to be tough. But honestly, it just kind of goes back to the points I've been making throughout this video. If those other things come to fruition, DeMar taking a step back on offense, being more of a facilitator on offense, Pat getting up more shot attempts and putting up over 14 points per game, the Bulls hopefully putting up more threes, the fact that the Bulls' overall offensive system will have a bigger emphasis on ball and player movement, better transition offense, pushing the pace rather than focusing more on isolation plays in the half court, doing all of these things can have a drastic impact on the overall offensive rating. Top 10, like I said, I know it's a stretch and likely won't happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does happen when we know this team is capable of putting up elite offensive numbers with the right system in place and players knowing their role on the court. And with that increase in offensive rating, it leads me into my next bold prediction on the year, which is the Bulls will actually finish in the top 20 in threes taken next season, which I know top 20 still isn't that great, but going from being the worst in the league by 3-point volume at the very minimum 20th in the league is a pretty substantial increase. But the reason I'm predicting this is because, well, one, the Bulls brought in 2 players who actually do take threes and hit them at a high clip, and we've seen aka Mark Eversley talk about this all off season long, even just recently in an interview with 670 The Score, talking about the team's specific goals for this season, and the first thing AK said is we've got to take more threes. So you know that the coaching staff and players are going to be mindful of this. Even a guy like DeMar, who isn't a 3-point shooter, you know he's going to be taking more threes as well. So to see the overall volume of threes increase for the Bulls should be expected. That said, they still don't have that many 3-point shooters, so unlikely they're going to go from last in the league to a top 10 3-point shooting team in the NBA, which is why I think top 20 is a little more accurate, even for a bold take. And then finally, my last bold prediction for this upcoming season, and I know a lot of people are going to laugh this one off, but it's that the Bulls will not only make the playoffs, they're going to win a playoff series. I don't know who it's going to be against, and obviously a lot of it is going to be subject to matchups, any potential injuries to the team that they face off against in the first round, but the Bulls winning a playoff series, I personally don't feel is out of the question. Now, my not so bold prediction, my more accurate prediction is that the Bulls will make the playoffs, but they're going to see a first round exit. If I was a betting man, that would be my most likely scenario, is a first round exit. But if the Bulls can get a team they match up well against in the first round, even if they're, say, 6th or 7th in the East, especially if it's a team that is a bit younger, doesn't have as much experience. I'm looking at a team like the Cavs, who, yes, had a great regular season, but then bombed in the playoffs. And I also just kind of go back to the you never really know with this Bulls team. Like, sometimes they come out looking like a lottery team, and they have games where they look unstoppable and look like a contender. You just don't know what Bulls team you're going to get on a nightly basis, at least based based on the roster from last season anyway. And if the Bulls suddenly decide to turn it on and play well, fire on all cylinders, yeah, they could mess around and win a playoff series, because we know they have the talent to do so. Anyway, those are my bold predictions for this upcoming season. Let me know your predictions for the year, and then I might actually do a video reacting to your guys' predictions. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.